She ripped my first-class boarding pass right in half, right there in front of everyone, like it was a napkin she didn't need. "You don't belong here." That's what she said, Harriet Stone, flight attendant, voice sharp as winter steel, not even bothering to lower it. And I just stood there, 13 years old, ticket shredded, the whole cabin frozen. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, nobody even breathed. Denver International, Gate 28, the kind of early morning where sunlight cuts long across the floor and you can practically taste everyone's hurry. But the second Harriet tore that pass, it was like time hit the brakes. All I could do was stand my ground, hands stuffed deep in my jeans so nobody could see them shake. Now, you got to picture Harriet. Early 50s, hair yanked so tight in a bun it probably gave her a headache. Uniform crisp, clipboard clamped under one arm like a riot shield. She had this way of looking at you that said rules are rules, and she was the last word. Business folks lined up, government types, a couple scholarship kids. My ticket was real me granddad, George Thornhill, former governor of Nebraska, had paid full price and insisted I ride first class so I could prep for the National Youth Forum. No discount, no favor, just the way things are supposed to work. But Harriet, she treated me like some kid who'd wandered into the wrong movie. She just ripped the pass. Silence hit like a slap. One businessman almost dropped his coffee. A woman gasped. A flight attendant halfway down the jet bridge went stiff as a scarecrow. I tried to do what my grandfather always said. Stand tall, speak plain, but don't raise your voice unless you want to fight. "Please step aside," Harriet said, as flat as a parking lot. "This cabin isn't for children." I felt my knees wanted to bail, but I said it anyway. I have a valid first-class seat. Soft, steady, like I was explaining algebra. Harriet's lips curled. "You'll find a seat in economy. There's an empty row back there." And the businessman, God bless him, spoke up. "That boy paid for this seat. There has to be a mistake." Harriet, not missing a beat, fired back. "Minors aren't permitted to travel alone in first class. Protocol requires," that bureaucratic lingo, as if she was quoting from a stone tablet. But I wasn't alone, not really. I had my phone, and I had a lifeline. See, Grandpa Thornhill set me up with something speciale digital credential, clear flight delegate access. Only a handful of people in the country have it. My thumb hovered over authorize. Harriet stomped closer. Two security officers trailed her. Officer Taylor, big guy, crew cut, hand resting close to his belt. My heart wanted to crawl out my throat, but I kept my face blank. I slid an earbud in, hit the button, called Governor Thornhill. On speaker, my grandpa's voice calm as ever. "Who am I speaking with?" "Grandpa, it's Caleb. I need code 77. I heard gasps, saw faces go pale. Officer Taylor's jaw clenched. Harriet took a step back. "Activate," Grandpa said. "No fuss, no drama." Within a minute, alarms started pinging across 3 airlines. Screens flashed red in Denver, Chicago, Atlanta. Pilots locked cockpits. Control towers paused departures. The whole network slowed to a crawl because a kid had the keys to the castle. You want cinematic? Imagine a jet bridge gone silent. Passengers pressed against the glass. Harriet suddenly realizing she'd just stepped in it deep. "We would need to clear the way," she managed, but her voice had lost its edge. She stepped aside and I walked through the parted crowd, people whispering, "I can't believe my eyes." A retired colonel gave me a tiny salute. In first class, Carlos, the attendant, nodded me, toward my seat like I just won a medal. I slid in, buckled up, feeling more like an imposter than a hero, but at least my knees had stopped trembling. Out the window, taxiways shimmered, planes locked in place. The captain came on, smooth as butter. "We're experiencing an unexpected delay." No one dared protest. You could feel the power shift 13 feet down the aisle. A kid in a hoodie suddenly had more authority than any suit on board. Somewhere back in Nebraska, my grandfather sipped his coffee and watched the news break. I knew I'd just passed his toughest test. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. Now, if you're picturing me as some brash wunderkind, don't. Back home in Lincoln, I was the quiet kid, happiest in my grandfather's library, listening to policy debates or tracking the sun across the Capitol dome. My mother died when I was 9, my dad serving overseas. Grandpa raised me on ethics and chess games and eggs at a corner diner. He'd say, "Facts matter more than noise, Caleb. Change starts with understanding, not anger." Nights were for debates. Is silence complicity? When is a rule worth breaking? Heavy stuff for a kid, but it shaped me. When a youth forum invite landed, Grandpa just said, "You're ready." So there I was, flying above the Rockies, prepping for my first real debate on education funding. I won a few science fairs, coded a farm app, even beat a couple college kids at chess. But none of that mattered when Harriet Stone looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong. That was the lesson. You can be prepared, you can be right, but sometimes people only see what they want. I thumbed the ClearFly app again. Its deep blue screen flashed National Passenger Trust Index, a tool Grandpa called not a gift, an obligation. Use it only when it matters, he'd said. I was the only kid under 18 on the plane with that kind of access, and right then, I realized most adults didn't even know it existed. Carlos circled back, offered water. I shook my head, "No, thanks." He gave a sympathetic smile and moved on. Passengers avoided my gaze or shot furtive glances, but nobody said a word. My own hands finally stopped shaking as the cabin settled into that strange, tense peace. It's funny what your mind does after a moment like that. I found myself replaying the whole thing. Harriet's sneer, the torn ticket, the crowd holding its breath. Fear, then calm, then this strange conviction. In front of me, a man in a Navy suit recorded the aftermath on his phone, the airline pin on his lapel glinting. He probably knew this was policy, not just drama. The plane leveled off. The recorded voice invited us to sit back, relax. For the first time, I did. I let myself feel a spark of pride. Grandpa would be waiting at the airport, his half-smile, all the congratulations I'd ever need. You know what I mean? Sometimes, courage doesn't sound like a war cry. Sometimes, it's just refusing to move when you're right. That's all I did. But it wasn't over. Harriet Stone returned, stiff, apology rehearsed but hollow. "Sir, you'll need to gather your things and come with me." She didn't say Caleb or even Mr. Thornhill, just sir, like I was a misbehaving pet. I grabbed my backpack, tablet, tried to keep my dignity. She escorted me to the back, to an empty seat in economy. The whole cabin watched, some in pity, some disgust, a couple with admiration. I pressed my phone, flagged the ethics breach. No big alarms, no drama. Just a quiet confirm on the screen. Less than a minute later, the first chimes echoed through the cabin. Attendants checked their tablets. Faces went pale. Ethics verification required. The captain's voice. "We are currently holding due to a systems alert. We apologize." Some applause, half-hearted, but to me it felt like a standing ovation. I let the system do the talking. Back in Nebraska, Grandpa watched maps fill with red alerts. Flights halted, $1.7 billion in airport funding frozen. In airline boardrooms, executives panicked. How do we get this lifted? A kid had triggered a nationwide standstill. Social media exploded. Denver boy halts 150 flights. A retired teacher in first class typed. She looked at him like he was disposable. The hashtag Thornhill effect was born. They took Harriet Stone into a glass-walled conference room overlooking the tarmac. Executives, legal, FAA. Played the video. Harriet tearing my ticket, me standing there, stone-faced. "That is you," her boss said. Because of that, the FAA is investigating. A flight attendant dropped a coffee at her elbow, whispered, "They're using your heart rate data. You spiked when you tore the ticket. No more hiding." By afternoon, my grandfather and I stood in a Denver hotel ballroom, banners reading ethics in air travel. Reporters everywhere, cameras flashing. Grandpa spoke first. No child should be told they don't belong simply because of their age. Then it was my turn. I just stood still. I wanted dignity, not attention. If I can help protect other kids, then it's worth it. The FAA's deputy administrator took the mic. Effective immediately, we're placing a hold on funding to any carrier under investigation for minor displacement violations. Caleb, we invite you to testify before Congress. They called it the Thornhill Chart era new set of rules. No miner moved without a real reason. Quarterly ethics reports, big penalties for violators. Airline CEOs promised $50 million for new training. The world watched as a kid's quiet stand rewrote policy. Congress. House hearing room. All marble and nameplates. Chairman Porter. Our witness is Mr. Caleb Thornhill, who at 13 sparked a national review. I told my story. Sometimes standing still is louder than screaming. I wanted accountability, not attention. The FAA laid out the new rules. See protection for minors, real-time audits, transparency. Any breach, immediate penalty. A reporter asked the airline CEO if money would trump ethics. We'll do third-party audits. No compromise. The committee applauded. This isn't just a policy fix, I said. It's a cultural shift. A month later, I'm back at Denver, first-class line, boarding pass in hand. The flight attendant Diana Wilson, new chief, the first black woman in that job, smiled, scanned my ticket, and said, "No one's going to question your seat today." The crew's more diverse. They hand me a brochure. Your rights as a minor passenger, Thornhill Charter explained. The old couple who once triggered the confrontation got upgraded, offered seats together. The woman looked at me, mouthed, "I'm sorry. I dead no grudge." A familiar face, Zoe Washington, marketing exec, grinned. They remembered your masterclass on unconscious bias. She's now helping the airline track metrics on Move Kids, proving it's good for business too. Halfway through the flight, the captain invited me to the cockpit. "You set a new standard," he said. Lieutenant Chavez, the co-pilot, added, "Your stories required reading at the academy." On a screen, a green bar, no ethics violations. It was working. As we flew east, Zoe whispered, "Tonight, Atlantic Global is sharing their ethics training with 3 other airlines." You earned that. I smiled, heart light. Outside, clouds drifted by. Inside, a new system quietly protected kids like me. And that's the thing. I didn't shout, didn't rage. I just stood still. Sometimes that's all it takes to shift the world a little closer to right. Now, let me ask you, what would you have done in my shoes? Do you think the system worked? Or was it just one lucky kid with the right connections? Where's the line between rules and justice, between power and principle? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop your tape below. Let's talk about what it really means to belong and who gets to decide.